mind me asking, Chief, what exactly is this proposal of yours? Lana, that is to say, the defendant, has asked me if she could speak directly to the court. She wants to do what? Having heard what she intends to say, I feel she should be granted her request. In the end, it should save everyone a lot of time and trouble. What's this all about, defendant? I'd just like to make one simple request and then I'll be finished. Well then, what's your request? Your Honor, I'd like you to put an immediate end to this trial. Huh? I confess to all charges against me. On February 21st of this year, I murdered Detective Bruce Goodman in the underground parking lot of the prosecutor's office. No, Lana! You can't. Your Honor, the defendant's claim does not change the defense's plea. In that case, Mr. Wright, I no longer require your services. But Lana! Your Honor, I hereby forfeit my right to an attorney. The prosecution may lack direct evidence against me, but it has sufficiently proven its case through testimony and circumstantial evidence. I would like you to render your verdict now if you please. Well, the defendant certainly has the right to self-representation. The request is legally valid, although this is an unprecedented situation. Indeed, it appears there's no further need for this to continue this trial, even if Mr. Wright may feel otherwise. It can't be happening. It appears the time for this verdict has arrived. This court finds the defendant... Objection! There it is! Oh, it's Edgeworth! One moment, Your Honor. Mr. Edgeworth, the prosecution has not yet proven the defendant guilty beyond reasonable doubt. Any ruling at this stage will certainly be premature. Come now, Worthy. I understand this is a difficult time for you, but why don't you just be a good little boy and keep your mouth shut, Edgeworth does not know how to do that. I don't think I care for your tone, Chief Gant. What? Creating another fabrication to cover up your past mistakes, sorry, but I'm no longer the naive little boy you would have me be. Damn. Well, this sudden confession from the defendant, it's obvious to me some kind of deal was struck behind the scenes. Some kind of deal, Not everyone operates as you do, Worthy. I thought so, Your Honor. The prosecution would like to change its first witness. Oh, to whom? As its first witness, the prosecution would like to call Ms. Emma Skye. I request the court hears her testimony. Mr. Edgeworth, I'm exercising my rights to self-representation. I don't think we need to I don't care what you think, Ms. Skye. The exposure of truth sometimes results in tragedy. However, no matter how tragic the truth may be, it would be an even greater tragedy to avert one's eyes from it. Very well, the court shall grant the prosecution's request. That's okay with you, right, Chief Gant? Worthy, you'll live to regret this, mark my words. Miss Emma Skye, please take the stand. Looks like Edgeworth has decided to take the horse by the reins. Now then, witness, please state your name and occupation. My name is Emma Skye. My occupation? I'm Lana's little sister. That's not a job. And I want to be a scientific investigator. 2 years ago, you encountered the serial killer Joe Dark of the Joe Dark killings. Is this correct? Yes. I'm trying my hardest to forget about that, though. I'm sorry, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to recall those events one more time. That's it, Edgeworth is going full bore now, he's going crazy. Mr. Edgeworth, please remember this trial concerns the murder of Detective Goodman. It is an incident that was resolved 2 years ago, really all that relevant? Yes, it most certainly is. Well, okay then. He sure gave in fast. Now, please testify about what happened to you 2 years ago. The trip to yesteryear has finally begun. bound to lead to the truth behind this trial. I was waiting in my sister's office that day. A man came running in and took me hostage. Neil Marshall rescued me, but I'll never forget what I saw in that instant. The man raised up his knife and stabbed Mr. Marshall in the chest. He was stabbed in the back. It's a good thing you weren't harmed. I passed out. I don't remember much. That's understandable. However, please tell me, Mr. Edgeworth, what does this testimony have to do with Detective Goodman's murder? That will soon become apparent, Your Honour. You've got to admire him for his courage, considering he has no evidence. See, if we'd have tried that, we'd have been told to shut up. Very well, the defence may begin its cross-examination. Alright. 2 years ago, the defendant was a detective at the police department, correct? Yes. She was second in command under the then Deputy Chief of Police Gant. My sister, she was the best detective ever. Yes, I remember. Deputy Chief Gant and Ms. Skye used to be quite the pair. I believe they shared the same office. That's right. I'd always sit at my sister's desk and dream about playing that organ. I wanted to play it that day too. The police department and the prosecutor's office held a ceremony that day. Lana promised to take me to dinner after she finished her work. A man came running in and took me hostage. Man? Yes, Joe Dark. He was a serial killer. Joe Dark was brought in for questioning on that day of the ceremony. We were desperate to get anything that would lead to an arrest. When he saw his chance, he fled the room, right? Upon fleeing the room, Dark proceeded to take the elevator. He must have been in a panic because the elevator was going up. Then he ran into Skye and Gant's office. There was a lot of noise coming from outside, so I opened up the door to have a look. That's when I saw him. Neil Marshall rescued me. What was the prosecutor doing there? That day there were 2 people present during Dark's questioning. Deputy Chief Damon Gant and Prosecutor Neil Marshall. Almost forgot about Gant. I didn't. I said earlier, he obviously chased after him as well, right? He didn't just leave Marshall to do it on his own. Marshall was just a bit quicker. Neil Marshall had just received King of Prosecutors Award. Young and dedicated, he went straight to the questioning room after the ceremony. I assume that would also be why he was the first to run after Dark. When Dark grabbed me, I thought I was as good as dead. And that's when Prosecutor Marshall came running in. I don't clearly remember what happened then, but I'll never forget what I saw in that instant. Can you tell us about that? Mr. Marshall jumped on Dark and just then the lights went out. The lights? I've just had a thought as well. Lana doesn't know about the fingerprints, correct? No, she doesn't. But I've just had a thought about something that's been confusing me, which was this evidence list and the fact that on the back is the drawing of the scene that she's describing. I remember now, she did tell us that she tried to describe it and then she also tried to draw it. She drew it on the back of the evidence list. So they must have given her that piece of paper to draw what she thought she saw. So that's why that's there. Don't know if that's relevant yet, but I just thought I'd clarify. It was just about the time of year there was a terrible storm going on and lightning struck nearby. So the electricity went out. Wait a minute. If it was pitch dark in that room, you shouldn't have been able to see anything, right? Right, but just then a lightning bolt flashed outside again. That sudden flash left an unforgettable image of the scene in my mind. I see. I told the detective about what I saw then. The detective? Yes, Detective Goodman. He was in charge of the case. Detective Bruce Goodman was the victim. Hear more? So you spoke with Detective Goodman about this 2 years ago. Yes, that's what was so scary about this trial. And you told Detective Goodman what you saw? Yes, but at the time the words just wouldn't come out. That's why I drew a picture. A picture, yes, I think she mentioned that before. We have that. Well, Mr. Wright, have you heard enough? This picture the witness drew, I believe it has a very important meaning. But the list of evidence I was given 2 years ago didn't contain a picture. Witness, would you mind if we added this statement to your testimony? Yes, Your Honor. Drew a picture of the scene once, but it seems to have been lost. You drew a picture of the scene you witnessed, right? Yes, I wanted to do everything I could to help the investigation. I can see it now whenever I close my eyes. That's strange. I took over the case after Prosecutor Marshall died, yet I've never received any picture. Perhaps the witness is mistaken. But I did draw it, I swear. I'm not just imagining it. This picture that Emma drew reminds me. Guess I should check the evidence again. Well, we will in a minute. Anyway, let's continue. The scene that imprinted an image on your mind, can you please describe it to us? The man raised his knife and stabbed Mr. Marshall in the chest. That must have been a real shock. Even now when I close my eyes, I can still see it just as clear. Tell us, what were you doing at that moment? I believe you testified that Joe Dark was holding you hostage. When lightning struck and the lights went out, Mr. Marshall jumped on Dark. I was thrown aside and the two began to wrestle each other. I'm pretty sure I was watching them. He doesn't have any reason to lie, but Lana sure does. I need to get Emma to tell me as much about this as she can. Single stab wound, pierced heart and lung, died from blood loss in under 10 minutes. The picture we saw was of him having been stabbed in the back, but it doesn't say stabbed in the back here, does it? It does on the front page though. Stabbed in the back, died from a punctured heart and lung. It doesn't say it on the actual bloody thing here. So we do need to object to the fact that she saw him stabbed in the chest. That didn't happen. Yeah. I don't know whether we should present the picture as well. Let's try presenting the picture. I mean, it's not technically an objection, but... Mr. Edgeworth, this little girl put all her heart into drawing that picture. And yet you would insist on denying its existence? Alright, so we're objecting to him, not her. Hey, I'm not the bad guy. Yes, you are. All I'm saying is that, as the case prosecutor for this case, I wasn't handed such a picture. That may well be, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Behold. This is the evidence list for the SL9 incident. Please turn it over, Your Honor. Ah, what's this? Ta-dong! Yes, what is that? Hey, that's it! That's the picture I drew. Indeed, two men appear to be wrestling here. What's the meaning of this? What are you doing with that list? E? Only the prosecutor in charge should have access to that list, huh? These lists, they're different from each other. Yes. This is the other reason why he doesn't have part of it. They didn't want him to see this picture. It's not necessarily about the other evidence on that list. They just didn't want him to see that picture. What? It would appear, Mr. Edgeworth, that the evidence list you were handed 2 years ago was incomplete. These two lists fit together to form one. You can see the marks here where they were torn apart from each other. So you see, Mr. Edgeworth, It's quite obvious what happened. 2 years ago, only half the evidence in the case ever reached you. What? What? I resign again! Order. The Miss Sky. Why did you draw the picture on the back of such an important list? Because that's what the detective Goodman handed me in the questioning room, Your Honor. Yeah, like, I don't know, he gave me the paper. Wait a minute. If this list was torn in half, then that means... Your Honor. Are you alright, Mr. Wright? Your eyes are bulging from your head. If this evidence list was torn in half, there might be more of the drawing on the back of Mr. Edgeworth's list. Is there going to be another person? Yes, that's quite conceivable, Mr. Edgeworth. It's possible. Let's see. Has he never turned this over? No, I get handed a piece of paper. I only ever look at one side. I haven't got time for anything else. Is something wrong? Do you even have to ask? Come on, Edgeworth, spit it out. Sorry, Your Honor. There is indeed something drawn on the back of my list. That thing? That thing was dancing in the evidence room? Clearly this act of vandalism is the work of a certain chief of detectives. I guess it was out of scrap paper. But this has nothing to do with anything at all. Okay, we've restored the full list. Oh god, thank you for getting rid of the music again. I'm gonna have nightmares. Very well, witness. Will you please testify about the picture you drew 2 years ago? Huh? Oh, yes, sir. Yes, Your Honor. What's wrong with Emma? She seemed to be thinking about something when she was looking at the picture. Okay, so we didn't object to the stabbing in the chest. Maybe we can do that again later? This is the picture I drew 2 years ago. The flash of lightning was so bright all I could see were the shadows, so she wouldn't have been able to tell one person apart from the other. After that I must have fainted. Again, that's why I thought lots more happened. She fainted from being stressed out, and the fight continued for quite a while. This picture shows exactly what I saw in that instant. To think a flash of lightning could burn such an image in your mind. Thanks to that, though, she was able to show us exactly what she saw. Well, I don't see any contradictions here. This clearly shows Joe Dark about to murder prosecutor Neil Marshall. The defense may now begin its cross-examination. Did you draw this picture right after the incident? I think I drew it 2 or 3 days later. At first I was in such a state of shock, I couldn't do anything. During that time the investigation team was reorganizing. Detective Goodman was placed in charge, under the direction of Damon Gant and Lana Skye. 2 or 3 days later, the memory should still have been fresh in her mind. Excuse me, witness. Can you please tell us why this picture is painted all black? The flash of lightning was so bright, all I could see were their shadows. So at the time you didn't even know it was Mr. Marshall who had come to your rescue? No, I couldn't see him clearly. The lightning was so bright, and I was knocked to the floor. You were knocked to the floor? Dark had a tight grip on me, but when Mr. Marshall jumped on him, I was knocked away. I turned around, and then there was the flash. That was when the lightning flashed. Poor Emma, I'm just glad she wasn't hurt. What happened after the lightning flashed? After that I must have fainted. You mean you didn't see the actual murder take place? No, I'm sorry. The flash of lightning only drove off the darkness for a split second. Not only that, but the trauma of the situation understandably caused the witness to faint. Do you really need to torture this girl any further? Oh, what? Hey, I'm not the bad guy here. Yes, you are. You're all bad guys. Anyway, this picture shows exactly what happened that instant. Sorry for asking so many times, but are you sure you drew exactly what you saw? Of course, this is the exact scene. This wasn't influenced in any way with your talks with the detectives? Are you insinuating we somehow manipulated her memory, Mr. Wright? No, of course not. Better watch out what he might find some way to cut my salary. I drew this picture before I heard anything from the detectives, so I don't think anyone's story would have influenced me. Mr. Wright, is there something that's bothering you about this picture? Well, that's strange. She claims this is exactly the scene that was imprinted in her mind, and yet there's clearly a contradiction here. Okay, so what do we object with then? You know what's interesting to me? In the picture, let's just go back so we're at the actual picture. Can you see the complete backside of the restored one? That's a good point. I didn't actually look, did I? That does look like the arch of the windows over on this side here, right? That looks like... Oh, no, that's the wrong way. Everything's inverted on my webcam. Ah! These bits here. This bit and that bit up there. They look like the arch of the window. And those were arched windows. So what the hell would this be? Wouldn't be that, would it? I mean, maybe not. Yeah, that's just what I was thinking, the vase. It's kind of odd. But it would be there like that. Where is it? There it is again. I don't know. But it's the same style. She did draw that. So it could be the vase. Just odd shapes. It's not quite the same vase shape, is it? But what I was going to say is interesting to me is... Look at the weapon. She didn't draw it as a knife. She drew it as a flat end. Yeah, there is a Blue Badger plushie, although that wasn't in the Chief's office. That was in the Criminal Investigation office downstairs. We need to pick something apart here, and it's got to be about this picture. This is the thing that we're most concerned with, is this doesn't show exactly what she thinks she saw. So what is this? I don't know whether it's this, the whole, you know, stabbed in the back part. She keeps saying she saw him stabbed in the chest. But that doesn't show a stabbing either way. And also, that there as well, the knife, the halberd, it's got a broken tip on that as well, which is very... That's flat as well. I also noticed that that is actually very similar to the pattern of the break on the knife. It seems to be broken in much the same way. Look how she's holding it. It has the back end. What do you mean? They just don't know what to bring up as an objection. I mean, ultimately though, that head... that does look like the head, let's be honest. It really does. I'm just going to do this one. This might have nothing to do with anything. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this picture the witness drew contains a blatant contradiction. What? But I still remember it just like it was yesterday. So I guess it is the stabbing in the back. Mr. Wright, perhaps it would be faster if you simply pointed out this contradiction for us. What part of this picture contradicts the autopsy report? With that, right? I guess. Looks like Dark's knife and the halberd is interchangeable. Could be, yeah. But we sprayed that and it didn't have any oh, not the halberd, sorry. So yeah, it could be. I know what you're saying now, the shape is the same. The contradiction, of course, lies here. Take a look at the knife the man is holding. If you look closely, you can see the tip is broken. Even I don't have to look closer to see that, Mr. Wright. But, Mr. Wright, look at the evidence. See the murder weapon? The tip is broken too. If I recall, the tip of the knife was found broken off in the victim's body. It was the conclusive piece of evidence that proved Joe Dark was the murderer. Yeah, but how did it enter his body before he stabbed him? I'm afraid it's not so simple, you know? And where, pray tell, could you possibly see a problem? It's obvious, really. The victim suffered a single stab wound in the back. If the victim was only stabbed once, the murder weapon should not yet be broken. Ah, what's the meaning of this? Perhaps the knife was broken beforehand. Then how did the piece end up in his body? I'm afraid that's not possible. The tip of the knife was found inside the victim's body. If it was broken beforehand, it couldn't possibly wind up there. That's right, but what does this mean? All flying thick and fast now. The tip of the knife was undeniably discovered within the victim's body. Yes, it was planted there afterwards. The only possible explanation is the witness's memory is mistaken. No, it just means this knife wasn't the actual murder weapon. We're back round to the theory that that part of the trophy was removed and he was stabbed with that first, and then this knife was put in there afterwards. That's why it looked blunt. That's why I asked her so many times if she was sure she remembered correctly, and you accused me of bullying her. I believe you were annoyed at the time. But she was sure she remembered correctly. But there's no other way to explain this inconsistency. Objection! Not so fast, Mr. Edgeworth. There is another explanation. Have you forgotten already about a little something called falsified evidence? You're treading on thin ice, Wright. All I'm saying is that this broken knife tip might be the piece of evidence that was forged. You can't deny the possibility. No. Order! 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 Are you saying the investigation really was corrupted? Your Honor, please allow me once again to go over the events that took place the day of the murder. These two cops were still standing outside as always, as they have been doing for 2 years now. The police department and the prosecutor's office were holding a ceremony that day. After receiving the King of Prosecutors Award at the ceremony, Neil Marshall questioned Joe Dark along with Damon Gant. During his questioning, Joe Dark fled the room. Prosecutor Marshall chased after him and was killed by Dark. It is my belief that somewhere in this story there is a lie.